Locked in a trade fight with Donald Trump, you may have heard that the Carney government is reconsidering its multi-billion-dollar purchase of American F-35 fighter jets. Now, the leading candidate as possible replacement would be the Swedish Gripen. Newly obtained figures show how the F-35 clearly outperformed its Swedish rival in terms of military capabilities during the competition held by Canada in 2021. The CBC's Daniel LeBlanc has been looking into this, and he joins me now from Ottawa. So let's talk about what these results tell us.
Yeah, well, the results come from Department of National Defense, and they show the quite clear, stark difference between the F-35 and the Gripen, as fighter jets are quite different. So in terms of military capabilities, the score came in at 95% of all available points for the F-35 built by the American firm Lockheed Martin. By contrast, the Gripen built by Sweden's Saab only got 33% of the total score for military capabilities. We're talking here about the ability to defend North America, the ability to complete successfully missions against modern militaries, potentially Russia or China. Critics argue that, the scores obviously favor the F-35 because the Royal Canadian Air Force has always wanted the F-35, so that the tasks or the criteria might have been biased in favor of the F-35. What other experts are saying, though, is that they always expected the F-35 to win. They got the contract in 2022, but the difference or the contrast or the gap between the two companies is quite startling for many experts who knew there was a victory by the F-35, but maybe not by that significant gap. So we can listen to two experts who saw those results and what they think about them.
The capability assessment here says that there is a clear-cut winner, like no contest, no ambiguity. The F-35 was assessed as being much more capable than the alternative. And I don't think that that's fundamentally changed.
There's nothing close in capability between a Gripen and an F-35. Between a 4.5 generation airplane and a 5th generation airplane like an F-35.
So perhaps part of the consideration is precision versus politics as well. Daniel, why are these figures relevant 4 years after the competition was run?
Well, the debate is back on and raging between the F-35 and the Gripen because, as you said, the Carney government is revising its decision to purchase all 88 aircraft F-35s that it purchased in 2022. For now, there are 16 coming. Some people are arguing in government that that order should be reduced and the new fighter planes should be replaced by Gripens. The government has been enticed particularly by the promise of Saab, the manufacturer of the Gripen, to assemble them in Canada and thus creating thousands of jobs, both creating Gripens for the Canadian forces, but also for the international markets such as Ukraine. The defenders of the F-35 are saying defense policy is not a job or an industrial policy, that the Canadian government should buy the best fighter aircraft possible for the defense of Canada and North America, and to face off against potentially rivals such as Russia and China, who have much more advanced fighter airplanes and missiles and all that. So the debate is raging, and that's why I think those numbers are interesting again 4 years later.
Daniel, thank you for this. That is the CBC's Daniel LeBlanc in Ottawa.
Canada's decision to modernize its fighter jet fleet has been one of the most politically sensitive defense debates in the country's recent history. What began as a technical discussion about aircraft capabilities, cost, and interoperability gradually expanded into a broader conversation about sovereignty, alliance pressure, and the limits of economic diplomacy. At the center of that debate stood the F-35 fighter jet program and the United States' clear interest in seeing Canada fully commit to it. Canada's aging CF-18 fleet required replacement. The aircraft, first acquired in the 1980s, had been upgraded multiple times, but Air Force officials warned that further extensions would be costly and risky. Canada needed a long-term solution that could defend its airspace, meet NATO obligations, and operate effectively in the Arctic. From the beginning, the F-35 emerged as a leading contender, but not an uncontested one. Concerns about cost overruns, maintenance expenses, and operational readiness fueled public skepticism. Canada explored alternatives, including European-made fighter jets, while attempting to balance military needs with fiscal responsibility and political commitments. This prolonged evaluation process frustrated Washington, which viewed the F-35 not only as a weapons system, but as a cornerstone of allied military integration. The F-35 program is deeply tied to U.S. strategic planning. Allies who operate the jet share training, maintenance systems, intelligence frameworks, and operational doctrine. From Washington's perspective, Canada's participation was about more than aircraft, it was about alignment. As negotiations stretched on, trade tensions between the two countries complicated matters. The United States and Canada have one of the most integrated trading relationships in the world, but that integration has not shielded them from disputes. Tariffs on steel and aluminum, disagreements over dairy access, softwood lumber conflicts, and broader trade policy shifts strained the relationship. Each dispute carried economic consequences and political messaging. Against this backdrop, statements from U.S. officials and diplomats were scrutinized closely in Canada. Comments linking defense cooperation, trade goodwill, and alliance expectations were interpreted by critics as pressure tactics. While no official policy explicitly tied trade penalties to fighter jet decisions, the timing and tone of diplomatic messaging fueled public debate. Canadian officials insisted that procurement decisions would be made independently, based on national interest and military requirements. At the same time, they acknowledged the importance of maintaining strong relations with the United States, Canada's closest military ally and largest trading partner. The role of the U.S. ambassador became a focal point in Canadian media coverage. Ambassadors are tasked with representing their country's interests, advocating for policy positions, and strengthening bilateral relationships. In this case, remarks emphasizing the benefits of the F-35, combined with references to broader economic and security cooperation, were perceived by some as crossing from advocacy into pressure. Supporters of the F-35 argued that Canada's participation was logical. The jet offered advanced stealth, sensor fusion, and interoperability advantages unmatched by competitors. Operating the same aircraft as the United States and other NATO allies would simplify joint missions and enhance collective defense. Critics countered that Canada was being boxed into a decision by geopolitical realities rather than independent assessment. They argued that economic pressure, even indirect, undermined the spirit of sovereign procurement. The fear was not that Canada lacked choice, but that the cost of choosing differently was being made unacceptably high. Trade considerations amplified those concerns. Canada's economy is deeply intertwined with the United States. Tariffs or trade disruptions have immediate effects on employment, investment, and consumer prices. The idea that defense procurement could be influenced by trade leverage raised questions about the balance of power between the two countries. From Washington's perspective, however, the issue looked different. U.S. officials emphasized that allies benefit from shared defense platforms and that the F-35 program already included Canadian companies in its supply chain. Canadian firms had secured contracts producing components for the jet, supporting jobs and technological development. Participation, they argued, was mutually beneficial. The disagreement was less about facts than about interpretation. Was the United States applying undue pressure, or simply advocating forcefully for a program it believed strengthened collective security? Was Canada exercising independent judgment, or responding pragmatically to alliance realities? These questions dominated political discussion without producing simple answers. As the debate continued, global security conditions worsened. Rising tensions in Europe, increased military activity in the Arctic, and growing competition among major powers reinforced arguments for closer defense integration. For Canada, whose geography places it between major theaters of strategic interest, the need for advanced air defense capabilities became more urgent. The Arctic dimension was especially significant. Canada's vast northern territory requires aircraft capable of operating in extreme conditions, covering long distances, and integrating with North American defense systems. Proponents argued that the F-35 was uniquely suited to these demands. Skeptics questioned whether those advantages justified the cost. Eventually, Canada moved toward committing to the F-35 program. The decision was framed as the result of a competitive process, technical evaluation, and strategic necessity. Officials emphasized that Canada was not coerced, but chose the option that best met its defense needs. Still, The surrounding context ensured that questions about pressure and leverage did not disappear. The episode highlighted a broader truth about modern alliances. Military cooperation, economic integration, and diplomacy are no longer separate spheres. Decisions in one area reverberate across others. For countries like Canada, maintaining sovereignty while operating within powerful alliances requires constant negotiation. The United States did not need to issue explicit threats to influence outcomes. Its economic and military weight created an environment in which certain choices carried higher costs. Whether that constitutes coercion or reality depends largely on perspective. For Canada, the challenge was managing that reality without compromising public trust. Transparency, accountability, and clear communication became essential. Canadians needed to believe that the decision served national interests, not external demands. The F-35 debate ultimately became a case study in how power operates between allies. It was not a story of domination or submission, but of asymmetry. One partner possessed greater leverage, the other had to navigate that imbalance carefully. Trade war rhetoric amplified tensions, but it did not define the outcome alone. Defense needs, technological considerations, and alliance commitments played decisive roles. Still, the controversy left a lasting impression. It reminded Canadians that economic dependence can limit strategic flexibility. It reminded Americans that even close allies bristle at perceived pressure, and it showed how modern statecraft increasingly relies on indirect influence rather than overt demands. In the end, Canada's fighter jet decision reflected both autonomy and constraint. The country chose what it believed was the best option, but did so within a framework shaped by alliance politics and economic interdependence. That tension is unlikely to disappear. As global competition intensifies, similar dilemmas will arise again. Canada's experience illustrates how trade, diplomacy, and defense intersect in ways that challenge traditional notions of sovereignty. The F-35 was not just a jet. It was a symbol of how power is exercised in the modern world. Quietly, persistently, and often without formal ultimatums. Thanks for watching Alert 360 News, where real stories meet real impact. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the fastest growing news community on YouTube.